بسم الله، الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك وعلمنا من لدنك علما ينفعنا في الدين والدنيا يا كريم يا أرحم الراحمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. الحمد لله. Today we start the third dars, inshallah ta'ala, online, and the fourth dars, including the one on the weekend, which was a revision. And we are up to what he said in Arabic by saying فصل في شروط الوضوء, meaning the conditions of wudu. So wudu itself is a shart, it's a condition for salah. So, and we said that a shart, a condition, means that the salah is not correct without wudu, but wudu is not a part of salah. That's what a condition is. It's something that the main act of worship relies upon, but is not a part of it. Now, he mentioned 10 conditions for wudu. Inshallah ta'ala, read Arabic. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال المؤلف رحمه الله تعالى: فصل شروط الوضوء 10: الإسلام والتمييز والنقاء عن الحيض والنفاس وعما يمنع وصول الماء إلى البشرة وأن لا يكون على العضو ما يغير الماء والعلم بفرضيته وأن لا يعتقد فرضا من فروضه سنة والماء الطهور ودخول الوقت والموالاة لدائم الحدث. تفضل.
Section, the conditions of wudu are 10. Al-Islam, the age of understanding, cleanliness from menstruation and postnatal bleeding, being free from that which prevents the water from reaching the skin. Nothing should be upon the limb that will change the qualities of water. Knowledge of wudu being obligatory, not to assume the fard acts as sunnah. Pure water. 9 to 10, entering of the time of salah and continuity for a person who constantly remains in the state of impurity.
Okay, so the first condition, now the conditions of wudu are exactly the same conditions for ghusl. So he said here, these are the 10 conditions of wudu, shurut al-wudu, but the correct wording in fiqh is to say shurut al-wudu'i wal-ghusl. In some other books of fiqh, in Shafi'i fiqh, they say the conditions of wudu and ghusl, shurut al-wudu wal-ghusl. Now, the conditions of wudu and ghusl are both the same. The conditions of wudu and ghusl are both the same in fiqh, but the only difference is that when you talk about al-ilmu bi-fardiyatihi, knowing that wudu is fard, we say knowing that ghusl is fard instead of wudu. So we change them around. Intending wudu, intending ghusl. So whenever the word wudu is mentioned in its conditions, you change it around and you say ghusl when you're talking about ghusl. But the actual conditions themselves are exactly the same for wudu and ghusl. Okay. So let's see the conditions of wudu in Shafi'i fiqh. He said the first condition of wudu is al-Islam. Al-Islam. The first condition of wudu is Islam. Now, Islam is the first condition for all acts of worship. For all acts of worship. Why is Islam a condition to make wudu? Why isn't wudu correct without Islam? The scholars say basically for one main reason. The reason the scholars of fiqh mention that Islam is a condition of wudu is that wudu needs niyyah. You have to be able to intend wudu in order for your wudu to be considered an actual wudu. Without intention, your wudu is nothing. So the scholars say the condition of niyyah in Islam, the condition of intending anything, is to be a Muslim. If someone was to intend something but was not Muslim, they didn't accept the message of Islam, his intention is invalid in Islam. So the scholars of fiqh say shartul niyyat al-Islam. Islam is the condition of your intention. So Islam is also a condition for anything that requires intention in Islam. And that's why in salah, in wudu, in zakat, or say the conditions of it are Islam. First thing is always Islam. So intention, someone intending wudu and they're not Muslim, their intention doesn't count, and they are not considered, their wudu is not considered an wudu at all. Now, there is a case where a non-Muslim can make wudu or can make ghusl, not wudu but ghusl, can make taharah. What is his condition? one special condition in fiqh. So it is an exemption. In fiqh, sometimes you have an exemption. Like you have a main ruling, and then you have an exemption that doesn't affect the main ruling in fiqh. It doesn't affect the main ruling. Like in this case, if a Muslim man was to be married to a wife that is not Muslim, she is from Ahlul Kitab. Now, if he married her with the conditions of Ahlul Kitab, which are very hard to have in this day and age, and she wanted to make ghusl after the period in order for her husband to be able to have a relationship with her, she would need to take a ghusl, even though her intention doesn't count and she's not Muslim, she can still take a ghusl and it would be considered proper ghusl. The second condition is, he said, is tamyiz, the age of understanding. We mentioned in the first class, in first dars, that the age of understanding in Shafi'i fiqh is the age when the child can receive hasanat, can get reward. Before the age of understanding, which is known as tamyiz, there's nothing called ibadah, there's nothing called worship, there's no rewards that ever happen. So the age of understanding is not a certain number of years, but it is, the age of understanding is when the child can eat alone, drink alone, and can go to the bathroom alone. These are three conditions for the child to be considered under the age of understanding in fiqh. The third condition, he said, is cleanliness from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. Now, this wording is also not the most accurate. Other fuqaha say something that's more accurate, which is to be free from anything that breaks wudu. So whether it's bleeding or just anything else that breaks wudu. For example, someone's making wudu, but they're touching the private part at the same time. Would their wudu be correct? No, because as they make wudu, they break the wudu all the time. As they make the wudu, they break the wudu all the time. If someone was to make wudu and his wife is holding his hand at the same time making wudu together, the wudu doesn't count. Why? Because touching your wife breaks your wudu. So he's breaking his wudu and he's making wudu at the same time. His wudu does not count. Okay, after that, he said the fourth condition is being free from that which prevents water from reaching the skin. So if you had, for example, your skin had a very big layer of wax, for example, and you meant to make wudu, the water is going to go over the wax. It's not going to touch your skin. And in this case, your wudu would not be correct because the water is not really getting to your skin at all. And he said, وَأَنْ لَا يَكُونَ عَلَى الْعُضُوِ مَا يُغِيرُ الْمَاءِ. In English, he said, for there not to be anything on the limb that changes the water. Basically, if you had a lot of grease and something that changes the water, as straight away as the water falls into your skin, it turns into something that's not even water anymore. It becomes into a different liquid. Then, of course, your wudu would not be correct. To know that it's compulsory to make wudu. If someone thinks that wudu is not from Islam, someone thinks that wudu is just a norm that people do, but he makes wudu and he intends wudu, he's not really making wudu because he didn't know what to intend. So the scholars say the reason why you need to know that wudu is compulsory in order for your wudu to be correct is that someone who does not know that wudu is compulsory doesn't know what to intend. So your intention can only be correct when you understand what you are intending. In this case, the person doesn't know what he's intending and his wudu is not correct. And then he said, وَأَلَّا يَعْتَقِدَ فَرْضًا مِنْ فُرُوضِهِ سُنَّةً. To not assume that a fard act, an obligatory act, is not obligatory, it's sunnah. So basically, if someone thinks that you don't have to wash your face in wudu, you can wash your face if you want. If you don't want to wash it, you don't have to wash it. But he washes his face. His wudu is not correct because washing your face is a pillar of wudu. It's a part of wudu that cannot be left out. And why it is a condition? For the same reason we mentioned in the previous condition, that if you don't know what is compulsory and not, what wudu is made up of, what wudu looks like, what the compulsory wudu looks like, and you don't know what to intend. That's what he's saying, the same thing. Now the scholars say, when they're talking about this condition, not assuming a fard act as sunnah, they say that if someone was to basically consider all of wudu compulsory, everything, even washing his mouth and nose, even doing takhleel, between your fingers, all the sunnah acts even compulsory, then his wudu is correct according to what Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami has said, and he's one of the later fuqaha of Shafi'i madhab that we are allowed to take his opinion in anything. Also, if someone was to believe that wudu has compulsory parts and he has things that are not compulsory, but he doesn't know the difference, he doesn't know what's compulsory, what's not, also his wudu is correct, inshallah ta'ala, according to Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami and many other of the Shafi'i scholars. But if someone thinks that a fard act itself, one specific fard act of wudu is not fard, then this is the problem, and that's when it's not correct. Now, at the end, he mentioned two more conditions. He said, entering, the time of salah entering, and also continuity. So basically that you make wudu and then straight away you go to pray, you don't wait for a long time. These are two conditions for a specific type of a specific type of people who make wudu. Not everyone has to go by this condition. This is only condition for someone who cannot hold his wudu. If someone can't make wudu, he cannot, basically something is coming out of him every single second, him or her. They don't have 5 minutes to make wudu and go pray without something coming out. They don't have enough time to do that. Then they are considered in fiqh what's known as da'im al-hadath, someone whose spiritual impurity is ongoing, doesn't stop. This person doesn't have to basically stop what's happening to him, but he needs to wash himself and immediately go and make wudu, and immediately after wudu go and pray. He cannot wait long moments between these three. He has to do everything in order. But normal people don't need to do that. They can just make wudu and pray whenever they want, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, inshallah ta'ala, go to the next section after that. He said, فصل في بيان الأحداث. نواقض الوضوء أربعة أشياء. الأول الخارج من أحد السبيلين من قبل أو دبر، ريح أو غيره إلا المني. الثاني زوال العقل بنوم أو غيره إلا نوم قاعد ممكن مقعده من الأرض. الثالث التقاء بشرتي رجل وامرأتين كبيرين أجنبيين من غير حائل. الرابع مس قبل آدمي أو حلقة دبره ببطن الراحة أو طون الأصابع. تفضل أخي جواد.
The factors that nullify the wudu are 4. Anything that exits from either the front or rear private parts, whether wind or anything else except semen. Loss of intellect through sleep or other causes, except sleep while firmly seated on the ground. Skin-to-skin contact between an adult, non-mahram, male and female without any barrier. Touching the private parts of a human with the palm or inner surface of the fingers.
Okay, let's start them. Basically, in Shafi'i madhab, there's only 4 things that can break the wudu. Nothing else can break your wudu, no matter what. Number 1. الخارج من أحد السبيلين من قبل أو دبر. Anything that comes out of your private parts breaks your wudu. Now, something might come out of your private part but not be najis, not be impure. For example, if someone was to have a stone come out of his private part or her private part, that does not break your wudu. It happens to many people. It's dry, it's not wet, there's no liquid on it. It doesn't break your wudu, but it breaks your wudu, but it's not impure. So you need to go and renew your wudu, but you don't need to wash your private part. So if something that is impure comes out of your private part, and that impure thing dirties the area, the impure thing makes the area impure, it is wet, then you need to wash your private part and make wudu. But if the thing that comes out is either dry, doesn't make any mess, or is clean, then you don't need to wash yourself, but you still need to make wudu. Anything that comes out of you requires wudu, even if it is just air or wind. Sorry. So, and then he said after that, except semen. So semen is the only thing that does not break your wudu, but breaks your ghusl. And this is a bit weird sometimes. Some people might not understand it. In the Shafi'i madhab, they always mention this, that al-maniyyu yanqud al-ghusl lil-wudu, that semen breaks your major purity, it breaks your ghusl, you're going to have to go and have a compulsory shower, but it does not break your wudu. What does this mean? Basically, it means that if it comes out of you without you doing anything else that breaks your wudu. For example, someone was sleeping, sitting down. In the Shafi'i method, if you sleep while you're sitting down, your wudu doesn't break. And then he was to have a wet dream, his wudu is still there, but his ghusl has been broken. Or he was to think, the person was to think so much until they ejaculated, then they would have to make ghusl, but not wudu. Now, we just studied in the last dars that when you make ghusl, you immediately make wudu. You immediately make wudu. Wudu happens immediately. So why do the fuqaha say that your wudu is not broken but your ghusl is broken? What is the point of that? Basically, the fuqaha say this for a reason. The reason is that there is basically a general ruling in fiqh, qaida, a general ruling that says that if something major happens, the minor thing that falls under it doesn't happen. So, for example, if someone was to commit zina wal-iyadhu billah, and their ruling would be to be stoned in Islam, they wouldn't need to be whipped. Why? Because that's the minor punishment. The major punishment that happens means that it needs to go through the minor punishment. Now, your wudu isn't broken, but your ghusl is broken, meaning that if someone was to swear by Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they would not enter their house except on the state of wudu, and they entered their house after their ghusl has been broken by what I just mentioned, but their wudu wasn't broken, then they would not have to go and pay a kafara, go and compensate for what they did. But if someone was to swear and make the same oath but had broken their wudu, they would have to pay for that for breaking their oath, basically. Okay. Anyway, most of us would never go through this, breaking your ghusl, not breaking your wudu, but it's mentioned in fiqh. The second one is zawalul aqli. Whenever your brain is gone, your intellect is gone, you lose your brain by either by fainting, by going crazy, by getting drunk, by anything that is considered zawalul aqli in Arabic. You can't tell the difference between things, and then your wudu has been broken immediately. So every form of losing your mind breaks your wudu. And then there's one form that doesn't break in a certain case. If you sleep, only sleep, no other type of losing your intellect can be forgiven other than sleep. If you sleep while sitting down, in Arabic they say مُمَكِّنٌ مَقْعَدَهُ مِنْ مَحَلِّ قُعُودِ. Basically, basically the person has to not have any barrier between what he's sitting on and between himself. So if someone was to sit with their feet up high in the air and their backside would be out to the world, then they would break it, fell asleep. But if someone is sitting down like we sit normally, they just sit down, they cross their legs, or they're sitting with on a chair or something like that, and then they fall asleep. And that sleep goes on for 20 days, inshallah ta'ala. Their wudu will still be correct as long as they haven't lost their mind or gone into any other type of things that might break their wudu. Okay, after that, he said, the third one is التقاء بشرتين رجل وامرأة كبيرين أجنبيين من غير حائل. This is very, very important in fiqh. In fiqh, basically, if a man has reached the age of what is considered to be old. What is old in fiqh? Basically, I think he mentioned in the explanation here. So he says here, Brother Jawad, do you want to read the commentary?
Which number?
36.
Adult means the age that stirs up sexual desire in a person. Wudu will not break if this is only found in one of the two.
So if a man was to reach an age where attraction or sexual desire is found in him, the lady was to reach an age where sexual desire is found in her, they don't have to be baligh, they don't have to have reached the age of puberty, but it would be an age that is very close to the age of puberty. Basically, if they were to reach this age, then touching each other makes their wudu break immediately. And there's so many proofs for this according to the Shafi'i madhab. Every madhab has a different explanation when it comes to touching the opposite gender. So the Hanbalis believe that it does break if it is done with temptation. The Malikas say if you intend to do it with temptation, even if you don't find any temptation, and even if it's done through a barrier, it still breaks the wudu. The Hanafis say no. You need to have an erection in order for your wudu to break by touching the opposite gender. So every madhab has different conditions. The Shafi'i madhab has two main conditions. So all madhabs say that your wudu is broken when touching the opposite gender, but they have certain conditions. The Shafi'i madhab has two conditions. Only two conditions. Number one, both parties have to have reached the age of shahwa, the age when they can be desired. The second condition is that there is no barrier between the skin of both parties. No barrier at all. If you were to wear a thick barrier, even like a thick layer of grease or something, and touch the person, if there's a barrier, if there's a layer, then your wudu is still there. It hasn't been broken. And now the Shafi'is don't look into temptation, or did you find temptation or not? Did you feel? It doesn't matter. It all doesn't matter. Okay. If you touch someone with a barrier and you have the most temptation in the world, it doesn't break your wudu. And if you touch someone with a barrier and there's no temptation at all, it still breaks your wudu. So it has nothing to do with you feeling temptation or not, but they actually look at the case of the person himself, not what they felt or what they haven't felt. All of this has its proof and dalil, but that's something we cannot go into in a book like this, of course, and something that the scholars have talked about for hundreds of years. Now, there are three things that do not, a few things that do not break your wudu. If you touch the hair, it doesn't break your wudu. If you touch teeth, it doesn't break your wudu. So if two people are sitting there, male and female, and one of them yawns and the other one goes, stop yawning and touch their teeth, then the wudu is not broken. And then also touching nails does not break wudu as well. So your nails, teeth, and hair doesn't break wudu. Every other part of flesh and skin and these things break wudu according to the Shafi'i madhab. Okay. Now, okay. There's a bit more. There's many more details I can mention, but I don't want to go into too much detail. After that, he said the fourth one is touching the private parts with the palm or inner surface of the fingers. Now, the private part means the private part itself, not what is around the private part. So basically, for a man, the whole entire penis. For a lady, not the skin that is around the private part, but the actual private part itself. The back private part would be the actual opening of the private part. It would not be the butt cheeks or anything around it. Now, if the private part itself is touched with the inner palm, it breaks your wudu, or the inner surface of the fingers. How do we know what is considered the inner palm or the inner surface of the fingers in fiqh? The Shafi'i madhab is very clear with this. They say, get two hands, like I'm doing now on camera, and open your fingers up, and place your hands together, and 1, 2, 3, press down, press a little bit with a bit of strength. Whatever is showing does not break your wudu. So I can see between my fingers that all doesn't break your wudu. Whatever is not showing breaks your wudu. So this part breaks your wudu, but this part and this part doesn't break your wudu if you touch the private parts with it, according to the Shafi'i madhab. Okay, let's go on to the next section, inshallah ta'ala. He said, يحرم. The Arabic is on this side of the page, and then English will be next page, inshallah ta'ala. So he said here, فصل من انتقض وضوءه وحرم عليه أربعة أشياء. حرم عليه أربعة أشياء: الصلاة والطواف ومسح المصحف وحمله، ويحرم على الجنوب 6 أشياء: الصلاة والطواف ومسح المصحف وحمله واللبث المسجد وقراءة القرآن. ويحرم بالحيض 10 أشياء: الصلاة والطواف ومسح المصحف وحمله واللبث المسجد وقراءة القرآن والصوم والطلاق والمرور في المسجد إن خاف تلويثه والاستمتاع بما بين السرة والركبة. بسم الله.
Section: the forbidden actions for a person in the state of minor impurity in need of wudu are four: salah, tawaf, touching or carrying the Quran. The forbidden actions for a person in the state of major impurity in need of ritual bath are six: salah, tawaf, touching, carrying or reciting the Quran, and to remain in the masjid. The forbidden actions for a person in the state of menstruation are 10: salat, tawaf, touching or carrying the Quran, to remain in the masjid, reciting the Quran, fasting, divorce, to pass through the masjid for a woman who thinks her blood might soil the masjid, and 10: to take sexual pleasure from what is between the navel and knees.
Jazakumullah ta'ala khairan. Okay, there's a question. Touching the opposite gender, does it include your spouse? It includes everyone that is not basically a mahram forever. What's a mahram forever mean? Meaning that you can never marry them. If you cannot marry someone, no matter what happens in your life, then touching them does not break your wudu. So your mother-in-law as well, your sisters, your aunties, these people, your grandmother, these people would not break your wudu. For the sisters, the opposite. The same. So your brother, your father, your grandfather, your father-in-law, these things would not break your wudu. But your spouse is yes, they're mahram in the meaning that what we consider today mahram means that you are one family, but they break your wudu because it's not haram to marry them. You're married to them, so they do break your wudu. And of course, that's something that is very famous in fiqh. Basically, it's good, to make wudu for every single prayer if someone is married, or to to work around in that kind of way. And if someone cannot do it, cannot keep the wudu, then the fuqaha, if someone was to basically wasn't able to keep the wudu and to go by what the Shafi'i say in this particular part of fiqh, then the fuqaha say there's other options to follow a different madhab and to study that madhab. So there's always there's ways out of things like that in fiqh, but that is the general ruling or condition in fiqh. Now let's go on to what breaks your wudu in fiqh. So basically he's saying that there's four things that are haram. Four things. What is haram to do? What is haram to do when you break your wudu? There's four things that are haram to do when you break your wudu. There are 6 things that are haram to do if you break your ghusl, and there are 10 things that are haram to do if you were to be in the state of menstruation. So 4, 6, and 10. Now, the 6 means the exact same 4 plus 2 more. So when we explain the 4, we're explaining the first 4 of the 6 of the other ones as well. Now, the 10 means those 6 plus 4 more. So when we explain the 6 before them, we're explaining the first 6 of the third category, and then we will explain the rest of the ones after that. So it's pretty clear. So the first thing that it's haram to do when you make wudu is as-salah. It is haram to pray when you are not on wudu. Of course, if you make tayammum for a certain reason, that's fine. Or if you cannot find any water, nor can you find any dust to make tayammum with. In this case, you need to make salah. You need to pray without wudu, just because it's haram to leave the time of prayer without praying, but you need to make your prayer up after that. In a normal circumstance, you are not allowed to pray without wudu. If you pray without wudu, you get a major sin. You have committed a major sin if you pray without making wudu, according to many of the fuqaha. So it's haram to pray without wudu, even if the prayer is not compulsory. If it's like a sunnah prayer, it's still haram to pray without wudu. And then the second thing is to make tawaf, around the Kaaba. If you're not on wudu, you cannot make tawaf around the Kaaba. And the proof of this is that the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim made wudu and then he made tawaf. Abu Bakr made wudu and then made tawaf. Umar made wudu and then made tawaf. This hadith is a correct hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, and also there's another hadith that is very famous, which is at-tawaf al-bayti kas-salah. So tawaf is like salah, but you're allowed to talk in tawaf. Now this hadith is also in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, But the hadith I mentioned in Sahih Bukhari is also a very strong proof. And there's many other proofs for this. The majority of fuqaha believe that wudu is a condition for tawaf. The majority of fuqaha believe that wudu is a condition for tawaf. And then the third one is touching the Quran. The third one is touching the Quran. To touch the Quran means not just to touch the wording of the Quran. Many people think you can just open the Quran, you can touch the wording of the Quran, it's haram, but if you touch the sides, it's okay. No, that's wrong. Touching the Quran means touching the wording, the sides, the outside of the Quran, any part of the Quran. It is haram to touch any part of the Quran if you are not on wudu, because the reason it's haram to touch the Quran is out of respect. Respect, and here, touching the outside of the Quran also is considered respect. Not touching the outside of the Quran without wudu is considered respect. Touching the sides of the Quran, not touching the sides of the Quran without wudu is considered respect. To respect, basically has all of these meanings in it. And then, of course, touching the Quran without wudu is haram according to all the four madhabs. All the four madhabs, it's haram to touch the Quran without wudu. Now, if someone was to wear a glove, does that mean they can touch the Quran without wudu? No, it doesn't mean they can touch the Quran with a glove, because the same reason I just mentioned, the respect doesn't change when you're wearing a glove. Yes, it doesn't change when you're wearing a glove. You are not physically impure in Islam when you're not on wudu. Prophet said, "Al-Muslim la yanjus." Muslims do not become najis, no matter what. Okay, so you're not physically impure. There's no najasa on you, but you are not in a state of wudu, a state of spiritual purity. So, subhanallah, the state of wudu is what we need to hold the Quran. And then he said to carry the Quran. Why? Because carrying the Quran is even more severe than holding the Quran. There's one case that you can carry the Quran without wudu, and that's if the Quran is basically like in a bag or something, and there's other books in that bag. You don't intend to carry the Quran, but you tend to carry the bag or the other books or something like that. Then in cases like this, the Fiqh mentioned that you could carry without wudu. But the general case is that you're not allowed to carry the Quran alone without wudu. Even if it was in a bag, but you carry that bag alone, the bag has nothing else other than the Quran in it, you can't carry the Quran without wudu because it's not respect to the Quran. Okay, these are the four things that are haram for someone to make wudu. He said that whoever is not in a state of ghusl, there is 6 things that are haram. Number 1, salah. Number 2, tawaf. Number 3, touching the Quran. Number 4, carrying the Quran. These 4 are mentioned in wudu, so we're not going to explain them again. Number 5, reciting the Quran. Reciting the Quran. It's haram to recite the Quran if you are not in a state of if you're on janaba, if you are on major impurity. Now, this is probably very well known to you all. The scholars say even if you were to recite a part of an ayah, it's still haram. So basically, if the ayah was subhanallah, cut in half, and you recite 2 words of the ayah, your recitation is haram. It's haram. You can recite Quran in certain circumstances, certain cases that we'll mention in other books, inshallah ta'ala. Scholars mention if you're not actually reciting the Quran, basically, but you are reciting adhkar. Yeah, you're doing dhikr. You're not actually doing Quran, but you're reading ayat Quran because your dhikr is made up from ayat of Quran or something like that. Then instead, things like this, you can recite the Quran, inshallah ta'ala, according to the majority of fuqaha. But to open the Quran and recite, the sacred word from just open the Quran and just reciting, you're not allowed to do so when you are in a state of major impurity in Islam. And to remain in the masjid. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا جُنُبًا, not to enter the masjid when you are on janaba, when you are on major impurity, إِلَّا عَابِرِي سَبِيلٍ, unless you are entering the mosque from one door and exiting the mosque from another door. You're just using the mosque as basically as a road to go from somewhere to somewhere else. But if you were to stop in the masjid for a moment, it's haram. You can't stay in the masjid while you are impure, even for 1 moment. Okay, what is haram for someone who has a period? Salah, tawaf, touching the Quran, carrying the Quran, remaining in the masjid, reciting the Quran, and fasting. We all know that it's haram to fast when someone is on the period, and the fasting is not correct. And divorce. It is haram for the husband to divorce his wife when she is in the state of when she's on her period. It's haram for the husband to divorce his wife. And if he divorces her, it happens, but he would be sinful. And to pass through the masjid if she thinks that the blood might affect the masjid. So in a long time ago, people didn't have many different means to protect blood from falling onto the ground and stuff like that. So if someone knew that her blood was a lot and it might affect the masjid, it might dirty the carpet of the masjid or the soil of the masjid, then in this case she doesn't enter the masjid at all. But if she knew that it wouldn't, then she can also walk from door to door through the masjid, just like anyone else who's on a major impurity. And then he said to take sitr, please. This is okay. Take sitr, please. So husband cannot take sitr, please, from what is between the navel and the knees. From what is between the navel and the knees. Any other part of the body is fine, but that area must be left when she is on her period. And the proof of that is in Sahih Bukhari that Rasulullah used to tell his wives when they were on their period to cover whatever is between their navel and knees, or to wear an izar. In narration it says to wear an izar when they were on their periods. Now the scholars say it's haram for the man to take pleasure from that area, and it's also haram for the woman to basically also make the man basically take pleasure from that area, or take pleasure from the man in that area by making him touch that area. That's all forbidden in Islam. Wallahu ta'ala. Okay. After that, we have finished what is haram to do when you are when you're not on taharah, and we'll go to a very important part of fiqh, and we'll read through this very quickly, inshallah ta'ala. We're going on to something called tayammum, which is making wudu, making taharah with dust. So in certain cases in Islam, as we know, you cannot find water and you need to make wudu, you need to make ghusl. What do you do in Islam? You need to make tayammum. Tayammum is making taharah with dust. Now, a tayammum can basically, just as an introduction, can be made with a dust, with dirt that has dust, basically. So any form of dirt that has dust is fine, or with sand that has dust. So some types of sand out there, subhanAllah, have no dust to them. If you were to make tayammum, it wouldn't basically help. It's as if you're hitting just the ground. But if sand had dust in it as well, there's a dusty kind of sand, then that kind of sand can also be used in tayammum. So anything else cannot be used for tayammum. We can't make tayammum with the grass. You can't make tayammum on trees. You can make tayammum with cement or with any other type of rocks that you find out there. It doesn't count. But it has to be what is known in Arabic as turab, as turab. Okay. He said here, فصل أسباب التيمم ثلاثة. أسباب التيمم ثلاثة. So the reasons that someone makes tayammum, makes ablution are three. فقد الماء والمرض والاحتياج إليه لعطش الحيوان المحترم وغير المحترم ستة أشياء. وغير المحترم ستة أشياء: تارك الصلاة والزاني المحصن والمرتد والكافر الحرب والكلب العقور والخنزير. أخي جواد, please read.
Section: the causes of tayammum are three: absence of water, illness, need for water exists by oneself or worthy animals. The following six people or animals are classified unworthy: a person who forsakes salah, a convicted married adulterer, an apostate, a non-Muslim from a non-Muslim country that has a war with the Muslim country, a vicious dog, and a pig.
Alhamdulillah. Basically, the cases where you can make tayammum. If we were to go into detail, we would take hours and hours explaining this. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, in one of his not his big books, but one of his books that are a little bit bigger than this, he mentioned 11 or 12 cases where you can make tayammum. Okay, so these cases are the main cases. Most of the other cases fall under these cases. So basically, absence of water. The person cannot find water. Now, how do you know that you don't have water? There's ways to know that in fiqh that are not mentioned here. In the other books they mentioned. So basically, if there's no water around you, there's certain ways to go look for water. If you're in a state where there's no water around you, how long do you have to go and search for water? How do you search for water? These are all things that are studied in bigger books of fiqh. But basically, when someone has no water, you're sure there's no water around you, then you can make tayammum. When you're sure that no water around you, you can make tayammum. Or in certain cases, when you go and check and you look for water and there's no water around, you can make tayammum. Number 2, illness. So there's water around you, but the water harms you. Using water harms you. Subhanallah, this happens to many people. They're not able to use water at all. If water touches the skin, it's very dangerous for them. In that case, they need to make tayammum. If someone, for example, has part of their body is tied up and they have part of the body is under plaster, for example, then in this case they need to make a tayammum for that part that you cannot wash. Even if you can wash a part of your body, you still need to make tayammum for the other part that you cannot wash. So one part of your body you cannot wash in wudu, you make tayammum for that part. You make tayammum for that part. And this is all, inshallah, going to be explained in bigger books of fiqh. And the third case is if there is a need of water. Now, you need water, you're traveling, you've got nothing else, so you need water to drink. Or the animal that you're with needs water. So your horse needs water, your camel needs water, your donkey needs water. Or the people, your friends around you, the people you're traveling with need water, then don't make wudu. Don't drink don't use the water to make wudu. Don't make ghusl. Make tayammum and keep the water to drink, or keep the water to feed your animals, keep the water to feed the people you love. You don't need to go and put yourself in danger and do that. Okay. Now, when they say that you can leave wudu and not make wudu, then it has to either be a person or an animal that is considered worthy of not making wudu for. So unworthy doesn't mean that these animals are terrible things and disgusting things and we hate them. So no, it just means that these are unworthy for leaving our wudu for. That's all it is. And this is something that we only take from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, leave your wudu for such and such types of beings. We do so. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says don't, then we don't do. So someone who does not pray, has left salah, and they don't want to pray. So we ask them to make tawbah, they don't make tawbah, they don't repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then this person, we do not need to leave our water for. We can just make wudu, and they need to look for water themselves, and it's not our problem. It's not our problem. Someone who has committed zina and is already married or has been married, an apostate, someone who left Islam after being a Muslim, probably Muslim, understand Islam, a non-Muslim from a non-Muslim country that is attacking. So he's basically in the state of fighting the Muslims. He's here to fight you. Now you don't need to leave your wudu for him, but you can make wudu and don't worry about it. A vicious dog that might harm you, and a pig. Okay. So these are the reasons why we make tayammum. But now, let's, inshallah ta'ala, try to read quickly the conditions of tayammum, which is very, very important, inshallah ta'ala. So after that, he said, شروط التيمم 10. And then I'll read also furud al-tayammum. So these two sections are the last thing when we read today, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to try to go through them quickly because tayammum needs a lot of explanation. We cannot explain the whole thing in this book, but we're just going to give the main points of tayammum that you can understand, and then inshallah from that questions can come and we can understand it even deeper inshallah ta'ala. So he said فصل شروط التيمم 10 أن لا أن يكون بتراب وأن يكون التراب طاهرا وأن لا يكون مستعملا وأن لا يخالطه بالذكر نحوه وأن يغسله وأن يمسح وجهه ويديه بضربتين وأن يزيل النجاسة أولا وأن يجتهد بالقبلة قبله وأن يكون التيمم بعد دخول الوقت وأن يتيمم لكل فرض. فصل التيمم فروض التيمم 5 نقل التراب النية مسح الوجه مسح اليدين المرفقين الخامس الترتيب بين المسحتين. أخي جواد, read both sections.
Section, the conditions of tayammum are 10. It must be performed with the dust of the earth. The dust must be pure. The dust must not be already used on a limb or has been dusted off a limb. The dust must not be mixed with flour or anything like flour. A person should intend the earth. He should wipe his face and both hands with strokes of dust, with 2 strokes of dust.
Okay, so the first condition is that it must be from the dust of the earth. Like I said, you cannot just make tayammum with anything. I explained that already. The dust must be pure. So if someone was urinated on a dust, okay, and that urine dried up, the dust is impure now. We can't make tayammum with that dust. Dust has to be pure. And then it has to be not used. What is a used dust? Used dust is not when someone makes tayammum and goes, no. Used dust is the dust that someone wiped their face and hands with, and that dust fell down onto the ground. The dust that has left someone's face or hands after making tayammum with it, and it fell onto the ground. That actual dust itself that fell, that little bit that fell, that's what is used dust. You can't make tayammum with that dust. But a dust, an area where someone used to make tayammum, but they took the dust and they didn't, no dust fell back down, it's fine to make tayammum in that area. It's fine, it's not used. Okay, and then it cannot be mixed with something else. So if the dust was mixed with anything else, flour, cement, something like that, even a little bit, you cannot make tayammum because it has to be with dust only. It can't be with part dust and part something else. It doesn't work like that. Allah said, make tayammum with dust, we make tayammum with only dust, exactly like Allah said, because we follow the order of Allah when He talks about things that are special cases. We're not allowed to make wudu. We don't have to make wudu anymore. We have to go literally by every single thing that's mentioned in the dalil. And the person should not intend the earth. So basically, you have to intend to make tayammum. You can't just wait for dust to come and to cover your body and consider yourself, even if you had intention, it's not enough. You have to intend the earth itself. You have to basically hit the earth, or some scholars mentioned it, hit your, even if you hit your face into the ground, something like that. But you have to physically go to the earth or go to some type of thing out there and get the dust from it. Some type of body out there and get the dust from it. Then he said you should wipe your face and hand with 2 strokes of dust. So you should hit the ground how many times? 2 times. 1 for your face, 1 for your hands. That's tayammum. Okay. Remove any impurity before making tayammum. Remove any impurity before making tayammum. Now, impurity meaning even from any part of your body, not even from your hands and your face, but any part, even making like istinja, washing your private parts. We said in wudu, you don't have to wash your private parts before wudu. Sunnah only. In tayammum, you have to. Okay? In tayammum, you have to. وَإِنْ يَجْتَهِدَ فِي الْقِبْلَةِ قَبْلَهُ. Look for the qibla before you make tayammum. Why? The scholars say you cannot make tayammum until all the conditions of prayer are all there. Wudu, looking for the qibla, the time of salah has entered, removing impurity. All the conditions of salah are already there. Now you can only make tayammum. This is the only case where it's allowed to make tayammum, because tayammum is a very special case that only allowed when all the conditions are there and you still can't find water. That's what the scholars say basically. Now, in the Shafi'i madhab, some scholars say no, you don't have to look for the qibla before tayammum, but this is the condition. This is the opinion that the author is going by in this book. Now, and making tayammum for every single prayer, every single compulsory prayer, you need to make tayammum again, every single prayer. So you can't pray Dhuhr and Asr at the same time. Even the scholars say basically, like even Salat al-Jum'ah, if you're going to make tayammum for Jum'ah, you can't make tayammum for the khutbah and just pray with the same tayammum. You have to make tayammum for khutbah and then make tayammum again for Salat al-Jum'ah. So they're 2 different compulsory acts of worship. That's what the scholars say. Okay, after that he said, فروض التيمم 5. The compulsory parts of tayammum are 5 things. Number one, نقل التراب, transferring the dust to the body. Like I said, you have to intend the same, transferring the body into the dust. If dust is just on your body and you just intend that you made tayammum, you have to transfer the dust onto your body. Number 2, intention. Number 2 is to intend tayammum. Now, what do you intend? You can't intend to make wudu, to take off the impurity. No, there's one thing you should intend here, one main thing, which is to make salah permissible. Istibahatu salah. You intend to make salah permissible. That's what you need to intend to make them. One thing, because you're not lifting any impurity. You're just making it okay to pray. That's all you're doing. And then wiping your face. You have to wipe your face. The whole entire face has to be wiped. So dust in your hand, wipe every part of your face, the whole entire face. And then after that, the next page, he said, wiping your hands, including your elbows. So your hand, your fingers, your elbows, other side, your whole entire arm, like the same arm you're doing wudu, needs to all be wiped with the dust that you have in your hand. And then he said, following sequence between two wipes. You wipe your face first, then you wipe your hands, then you wipe your hands. Now, after this, I'll read the last section. مبطل التيمم ثلاثة. Three things break tayammum. Three things break tayammum. Anything that breaks your wudu breaks tayammum. So ما أبطل الوضوء. الردة, someone leaving Islam والعياذ بالله, breaks tayammum. You have to redo the tayammum again and they accept Islam again. And the third thing is توهم الماء in tayammum الفقري. In the case that you made tayammum, okay, because you didn't have water. In the case that you didn't have tayammum, you made tayammum because you didn't have water. Then after you made tayammum, you saw something and a possibility of water being there came to your head. That possibility breaks tayammum. Why? Because you can only make tayammum when you are sure that there's no water and the conditions of salah are all there. That's the only case you make tayammum. This condition needs a lot of explanation. Inshallah, if anyone is free to read the explanation in longer, bigger books of fiqh, but this is basically the main condition that needs a bit of focus here, inshallah ta'ala. And I'll leave, inshallah ta'ala, the sunnah way to perform tayammum to everyone to read, inshallah ta'ala, alone. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm very, I have an appointment, inshallah, very busy today, but I'll read through the questions here in chat very quickly, inshallah ta'ala, and then I will need to leave. So, I have a question that says, someone also asked, does discharge break wudu? A discharge break wudu? I don't. I think I'm not sure what you're talking about when you say discharge. If you're talking about anything that comes out of the private part itself, so the same area where urine or the back private part, anything that comes out of that breaks wudu. I think if it's talking about discharge, it's basically sweat or something that comes out of the private parts, then the scholars say it depends where this discharge comes from. If it's just sweat, or it hasn't actually came out of the inside of the private part, then no, it doesn't break wudu. But if it came from the inside, it breaks wudu. Can you touch Quran with translation? You can't touch the Quran. Now, if most translations out there have Arabic with it as well, they have the page of Arabic with it. So no, you're not allowed to touch these kind of Qurans because the Quran is still there. We understand it's a Quran and the Quran still there. If there's only one door, is it still haram? So out of my memory, yes. If there's only one door in the masjid, you don't go in from the same door, come out of it, but you go from one door and you exit the other door. That's out of what I remember. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And then another question here says, does powder count as dust for tayammum? Powder meaning that it's not actual dust, like it's just like talcum powder or something. You know, there's kind of dust with tayammum. Has to be dust from dirt. What if it was dust from a shelf or a table? So dust from a shelf or table, if it's dirt dust, dust that we just explained, the dust with the conditions of dust that we explained, happen to be on a table, then you can use that dust to make tayammum. That's fine. What about cleaning infant's private parts? Does it break? Yes, touching infant's private parts. If you touch the private part itself with no barrier, then yes, it breaks wudu. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Inshallah ta'ala, I am very sorry, I need to stop here. Inshallah ta'ala, I have a very important meeting, and I ask Allah to assist me. Inshallah, any further questions we can definitely continue in the chat, inshallah ta'ala. And I ask Allah to assist me all. Barakallahu fikum. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.